All right, welcome in to the late night Gamecock show on Wednesday, October 15th. Don't have Matt Aronson tonight, but I'm back, and tonight in Matt Anderson's place, we got JB making his late night Gamecock show debut. JB, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. One of two things is going to happen after this, which I have a feeling I know which one it's going to be. The ratings for this program, which is part of the network that I'm over, are going to tank, or they're going to go really high. I don't think they're going to go that high. I think people are tired of hearing me after 3 hours earlier this morning, man. But it's been a while since you and I have been on
Yeah.
together. The pride of Hampton County, South Carolina. As I don't know, do you still get that now that you're not joining me anymore?
So it depends on when I'm on with JC and Phil. Depends since we get on there, we go straight into the VHS dates part of the show, and sometimes I think when I'm leaving they'll call me that. But hey, it's that time, and appreciate you joining on, and glad you're going to be on. And so we'll tonight we're going to get a lot into got a lot of news to get into with the LSU recap. I'm sure people are probably tired of talking about that, but we'll talk a little bit about that, and obviously the big news out of the week on Sunday with being Lonnie Teasley no longer being the offensive line coach and Sean Elliott taking over there. And so we'll get into all of that, a little bit of that, talk about some of the things that went down there. Then at 8:30, about the second half of the show, Justin Lyles is going to join us. We'll talk some betting lines and things like that this game. So, just real quick, when you look back at that LSU game, JB, what's kind of your just initial thoughts from the game and what you saw and some of your maybe your biggest takeaway before we hit the show intro?
Well, it's the same that it's been all year. We've harped on it throughout the week on the morning show, just mistakes and shooting yourselves in the foot. And,
Yep.
you take the mistakes from this game, you take the mistakes from the Missouri game, you take the mistakes from the Vanderbilt game. And if you remove half of those, Carolina's got at least 4 wins. Carolina might have 5 wins, Alex. And they're right where I think that's part of the reason, and I know we'll get into it more, but I think that's part of the reason why people aren't ready to write off South Carolina football just yet, because they know if they can play mistake-free, the Gamecocks can beat anybody, and they've got that chance this weekend with Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's kind of the major point that's coming out of the game, and that kind of leads into what will be our first topic after the break. Would be Lonnie Teasley being let go and Sean Elliott becoming the new offensive line coach. I say new, I mean this is not a new position for him. He's been on staff before as offensive line coach, but we'll dive into more in that after this intro.
Gonna turn on the late night show, hear what's going down in Cooltown. I said I'm turning on late night show. Yeah, my Cox will let me down.
Well, as I mentioned off the top, one of the big things that we need to get into was the news that happened on Sunday with Sean Elliott being named the offensive line coach after Lonnie Teasley was let go. When we got the news as we were driving back from Baton Rouge, I don't want to say I was surprised by the news. I think you probably see that was eventually going to come, but maybe I was a little bit surprised just by the timing of it. Was that something that caught you off guard, JB? Did you think this could be something that would be a midseason thing? Because I think we were all kind of looking down the line to what could happen maybe at the end of the season here.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised because generally Shane Beamer likes to play it out. He's pretty well thought out and patient with his decision making. He does a lot of homework. He's got a tight group of people, and he'll lean on those guys when he's got some questions, and then he'll evaluate it and he'll go from there. But generally he wants to give people a fair shot. So what it told me was, again, understanding Shane as a person and as a coach and as a leader, is he felt like he had given Coach Teasley more than a fair shot at this. And it wasn't working. And, he pointed out earlier this week, and I know that there is I would say it's a smaller percentage of the fan base than people think that it is. It's just loud voices that want to question a lot of the things that he says publicly versus maybe how he says things privately or how he really feels. I actually, Alex, think he tells the truth a lot more than people want to give him credit for. I think he says you're around him all the time. He's a pretty truthful dude. I mean, I've been around him plenty, and what you see on that screen and then what you get is what you get. I mean, that's just him. No, he's tough on the field. But I think when he said, "Hey, look, this wasn't about like run blocking or pass blocking necessarily. It was about basically mistakes. Like we just keep doing the same things over and over. Like it never gets cleaned up. You can live with not being good enough. You don't like it, but you can live with it. Hey, we're not good enough. We thought that we recruited well. We thought we coached well. We didn't get them there. We didn't develop them well. You can live with those things, but what you can't live with is the stuff that continuously puts you behind the 8 ball. And when you've got, I don't know if Sean Elliott was, if Sean Elliott wasn't on this staff, Alex, I don't know if this move gets made, but he is on the staff. And so I think that Shane Beamer thought, look, I've got an easy answer to this. I'm going to do this at the end of the year. Let's go ahead and do it now.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, there's the mistakes that have continually happened. Like, you saw some progress just from a run game standpoint, but those pre-snap penalties were killers for them. And you think back to the LSU game, they had a handful of drives. I mean, you could probably say multiple drives that were getting into that, LSU territory around that 40 to 35 yard line or so. And then the next thing you know, you get a false start or some type of pre-snap penalty that would bump them behind the chains, and that would just completely derail the drives. And I think that's something that it's just kind of almost like a focus thing. And Shane Beamer has talked about it both on his post-game teleconference and things like that, the press conference this week. Just having a new voice in the room can maybe provide a spark. And that's something that I think Sean Elliott can provide. Because I think that's the number one priority on the board for Sean Elliott is you got to stop the focus mistakes, the things that are pre-snap penalties, because those are things that you feel like you can, I'm curious to see just from a progress standpoint what the offensive line looks like, just from a technical standpoint, from a pass block and run block standpoint. But it's just his number one priority has got to be to stop those pre-snap penalties because they're derailing drives, and it's not the only thing that's stopping this South Carolina offense, but that's played a major part in it. And I just want to see if you agree that's got to be Sean Elliott's number one priority on the board.
There's no question about that. I mean, we were talking to Perry Orth about it. I'm sure a lot of the people that are watching or listening tonight heard Perry today on my show, and Perry was talking about accountability with Sean. And look, a lot of the times this past weekend when LSU was pinning their ears back, which we're going to get this weekend, like for what it's worth, like anybody out there thinking that, oh, well, this is magic potion, right? I mean, they're going to get this thing solved and here we go. There might be a little bit of that when it comes to the mistakes, but as it comes to like the production on the field, I mean, they've produced in the run game the last 2 weeks. I mean, they've got net yardage, 446 yards on the ground. That's pretty darn good, guys, but at the same time, like if you look out there this weekend and you see Oklahoma in the backfield and, chasing Lenore Sellers around or making some tackles for a lot, that's going to happen. Oklahoma is one of the best defenses in the country, but when it comes to accountability and being able to keep yourselves in front of the sticks, I do anticipate that that's going to be better. How much better? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. And obviously, Shane hinted the other day, not hinted, he flat out said there will be some schematics and maybe some concepts and things like that. Usually, he's not that point blank, but he was on Tuesday, yesterday afternoon. So, that's number one. If you can go from 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 11 to 2nd and 7, giving yourself a chance at 3rd and manageable, I think that you're going to find that this offense, while it's not great and it's not sexy and it's not what everybody wants it to be, it's not also as bad as sometimes it looks if they can just continue to inch it forward.
Yeah, and some other things I'm interested to see with Sean Elliott taking over are what's the starting five look like? Is that something that maybe they make some changes there? Now to that point, actually now with it being 8-10, we should get the first availability report here in just any minute now. And they're banged up there on that offensive line. They already were missing 3 last week with Marquis Anderson, Casey Henry, and Nolan Hay. But are there going to be any changes on that starting 5 offensive line that we see at Oklahoma? I will see. Like that center spot's the one that's going to be interesting, just because Rodney Newsome started and they had some of the things that went down early. But I want to get your take on that right now. What would be your starting 5 from left to right on the offensive line?
Well, I mean, Shed Surratt is the question mark. I mean,
Shed Surratt too. Yeah.
That's the deal. You can make the argument that the guard play this year has been the best on the team, and you probably win the argument. I mean, Trevon Ball and Shed Surratt, and we've got the injury report here.
Yep.
Now, Surratt is doubtful alongside Kason Henry and Nolan Hayham. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on you with this.
No, you're good.
But Marquis is questionable tonight, and so is Gabe Brownlow-Dindy on the defensive side. They do have Brandon Cisse listed as probable, so that's good news for South Carolina's secondary. It's really good news, as a matter of fact. Brownlow-Dindy, I think, would be the next one I'd be curious to see on. But if Surratt can't go, I do. You've got an interesting situation here, because left tackle Josiah largely this year, in my opinion, hasn't played to the standard that he set for himself as a true freshman last year in the SEC. I think he has missed the mark tremendously at times. He's had some nice moments, and I thought he had a couple good moments the other night, as a matter of fact. But overall, from a consistency standpoint, he's a guy who probably could use that different voice, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're going to have to. It's not like you can take him out of the lineup when Surratt and when Henry are not able to go. So, I mean, what are you looking at here? You're probably looking at Big Tree. Newsome's probably your center.
Yeah.
I mean, Stanley. Look, I still don't understand. I don't know the answer. I've asked. I have not gotten a straight answer, so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how in the spring Boaz Stanley was basically cemented at the center position. And then all through the summer, it was a foregone conclusion almost that we're aware of, right? You were under the same umbrella, right?
Yeah.
We all,
yep.
Okay, Boaz was the center.
Yep.
And then that's what rolled out of it. And we're doing a lot of this, right? You're doing a lot of head scratching going, there's no way that's what it looked like in April and in March. There's no way that's not what it looked like in August. So if you're Sean Elliott knows that, and he's an accountability guy. So I don't know that Sean Elliott is going to roll the dice with Boaz Stanley unless he can snap his fingers and solve some of those issues and say, well, look, overall, he is better than Rodney Newsome. I just got to stop this from happening. If I stop this from happening, he's going to be fine. But I'm not in that camp right now. So I think it's Newsome. Ball is going to be at right guard. You're going to have Josiah, who's going to be at left tackle. Jatavius Shivers, I would imagine, is probably going to be out there at right tackle, but he had a rough night the other day. And then I would imagine it's going to be Big Tree over at left guard. I mean, is there something I'm missing here? Could it be anybody else? I mean, maybe if Marquis able to go, he's questionable right now. Maybe he slides in at guard and Big Tree goes out to right tackle, but I don't know with the health of him right now.
Yeah, I don't think so. And that's kind of where I would go to. Like, and obviously, Nick Sharp too. Like, so they do have a little bit of depth, but that depth is getting really tested right now on that offensive line. Like, they can't take much more injuries there, like, especially with what the availability report's looking like on Wednesday or tonight. So, I think that's kind of the gist of everything with the offensive line. Like, I think one of the questions that are out there now is for kind of the long-term future of what it looks like with Sean Elliott being the offensive line coach. And then also should have mentioned at the top of Ben Burris is now the tight ends coach. He was a pass game specialist. And I think one of the questions out there is this kind of, and Shane Beamer was asked about it Tuesday, is this kind of an audition for those guys? And he kind of said, I don't know if audition's the right word. Like, they're more worried. He's more worried about Oklahoma and things like that. Like, I think a lot of that will play itself out, and that's something that they'll worry about towards the end of the season. But it's going to be interesting. That's going to be the position group that everybody's going to be watching this week, just because, for one, the competition you're going to be playing against Oklahoma. Like, this defensive line's legit. R. Mason Thomas coming off the edge. Like, they got some dudes on the interior, Brent Venables, and we'll get into kind of some Oklahoma stuff here in a little bit. But they're playing really good football, and they're going to be tested. But it's funny. Shane Beamer mentioned how Sean Elliott was kind of staying on the other side, and I think one of the players, I think it may have been Jordan Dingle or Lenore, is one of the two, mentioned that Sean Elliott was right in there in the middle of it in practice, trying to do some clapping and things like that, just trying to get those focus things under control, because that's, as we mentioned off the top, that's got to be priority number one. And so we'll see. That's I'm interested to watch that and see there with some of those changes that we talked about. But from an offensive line standpoint, I think that's a kind of overall with this LSU game. Like I mentioned, it the run game looked much better, but it was just those sacks and penalties that really kind of killed South Carolina. And to their the defense's credit, like they really kept South Carolina in that game for the most part and kept with those goal line stands and the interception and the fumble. But defensively, I thought it was okay. The secondary had a little bit of issues there, especially when Brandon Cisse got out. They had some of those receivers get away from him. But overall, what was your defensive kind of takeaway on the game?
The same that it's been all year. I mean, those guys are going to give you a chance to win. I'll be pretty surprised if there's a game where they go out there and for 4 quarters they're just gutted and gashed. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, they're probably going to have some tough drives here and there. They have had some tough drives. I mean, Kentucky had a nice drive against them. Missouri had a couple of nice drives. Vanderbilt obviously had a few nice drives against them, but they never just popped. The balloon never popped for those guys. And if it wasn't for the defense the other night, South Carolina's blown out of that ball game. Yeah. I mean, Carolina turned them over 3 times, twice at the goal line with a pick and with a fumble. And with all due respect to my dear friend Mike Morgan, while LSU, you can blame them for having, for making some silly plays. Those are also forced. Like that ball was punched out at the goal line. Shane mentioned it the other day. It is something that they practice. They practice it nonstop every day. That is a part of practice at the University of South Carolina. And Peyton Williams made a nice play on a ball where Garrett Nussmeier was pressured. And that's what happens, And so, look, those guys kept them in the ball game, but the offense just couldn't really do much with it. You're talking about an Oklahoma team who's coming into town. John Mateer threw 3 picks this past weekend. I know Texas looked pretty good. Obviously, Mateer is coming off of the injury. That's going to affect his play. We all know that. Why can't South Carolina in front of 80,000 people at home do the same thing? I think they can. I mean, I think that this defense up front has continued to get kind of mesh and continue to get better. Last week, you didn't see any sacks. Credit LSU for that. They had a great game plan, and the fact that they wanted to get the ball out of Garrett Nussmeier's hands in about 2 seconds, and they were able to do that. Nussmeier is not a quick guy, but Alex, you were there. You've seen him play. He's able to kind of fade away from pressure and keep his eyes downfield. He's really good at that, so you want to give him some credit there. I think Mateer will be willing to take just as many chances as a guy like Nussmeier with his arms. And then what do they do with his legs? Who is that guy? Is it Fred Johnson? Is it Justin Okoronkwo? Like, who is it? They're probably going to have to spy him, so who's it going to be? But these guys are going to give you a chance, and that secondary is always looking for the ball in the air, and I think they'll probably get a couple more this weekend. I'm excited to see them play.
Yeah, that was a great interception by Peyton Williams. Like that was a play where a quick little slant route, and he read it perfectly and made a really nice play diving for it. Kind of keys to that game for the LSU game were stopping the run early for South Carolina, just because you wanted to get LSU into those passing downs. And early on, they were doing that. They were stopping the run early. They were forcing Nussmeier, and those receivers had to make plays against them. And to your credit with what you said with Nussmeier, like he just made the plays when he had to, kind of like he did against South Carolina last season. They just made those plays. And once you got into that second half and the offense wasn't, was struggling a little bit, LSU started to have some of those back-breaking type plays where it felt like South Carolina was about to get to Nussmeier, and then he would, move up in the pocket and get one of those 10 or 15-yard runs. And we talked about how good their running back Caden Durham is, and late third quarter into that fourth quarter, he has a couple of those explosive runs. I think just start that off the line and start to wear on at South Carolina's offensive line. But sticking with the run game, kind of flip back to the offense real quick. Like I think obviously the numbers are kind of a little bit skewed a little bit just because of the sack numbers, but I mean, that was one of the best run games South Carolina's had in quite a long time. And I think that's a positive to build on for South Carolina. One of the questions was, after Matt Fuller had that 72-yard run, like he kind of disappeared for the rest of that half. I think that's something, obviously Shane Beamer was asked about it and said he kind of talked about need to get that guy the ball more in the second half. And, kind of going forward, it kind of feels like your top two backs right now are Matthew Fuller and Russell Faison, because Faison also, I think he had his best game in the Garden and Black. He had a really good game. But I think those two are the guys you kind of stick with. And I think there's a lot to build on. Obviously, this Oklahoma defense is going to be good, but there's some things you can build on in that run game that if you can kind of stop some of those penalties that we talked about earlier, there's some things that you can do that's going to help Lenore Suggs and the receivers, because that LSU secondary had a pretty good game going up against these South Carolina receivers. There were a few open receivers that Lenore Suggs missed, but I thought LSU secondary had a really good game plan in that one too.
Yeah, they did. And Oklahoma's run defense is really good, as we know. I mean, they got the second, I think the second best scoring defense in college football. We'll have a bunch of these numbers and all of our matchup stuff in the preview show coming up on Friday. But I'll give you a number to keep an eye on now that Sean Elliott is. Look, he's in charge of the offensive line. Mm-hmm. He has run game coordinator attached to his title. I would say that's more of a money thing than anything to this point. I know he has had at times more influence in some of the game planning. But now that, hey, look, I think while Shane Beamer is telling us a lot, and Mike Shula never gives much on Wednesdays anyways, it's very vague, as you know, probably pretty boring to sit in there. I'm glad I don't have to do it. But if I do think that there is going to be a little bit more effort to have some of the things that Sean Elliott feels like will work on the ground implemented into the game plan. All right. Number one, Mike Shula, being an NFL guy historically, loves using play action. Now, it's been hard for them to set up a lot of quality play action plays throughout the season. They've had some, and some have been super. I mean, Nick Harbor caught a touchdown pass and went deep in Atlanta, right? So, they've had a couple of plays this year that certainly have worked, but they've had some things that haven't worked, and they haven't been able to do some of the things that they wanted to do as well. So I think some of what he will bring to the table will allow for that to happen if they can continue to move the ball forward, Alex. The other thing I would add, and this was my original point, 44. He's my favorite guy that puts the uniform on for Gamecock football. That's Mo Brown. If you go back to the days of Sean Elliott, look, inside zone is kind of his bread and butter. He can kind of mix it up a little bit and kind of play off of that and do some things. There's no question about it. I feel like Mo Brown is going to be a little bit more involved in the run game now. And that also probably the byproduct of that will create more opportunities for him in the pass game as well. I just don't see a way. I mean, somebody talked about him today, and the fact it might have been Joe D who mentioned, this guy's an NFL guy. Pat DeMarco nailed this a year ago with 44. He said that kid can go to the NFL, and here's the reason why. Because he's got so much want to. Pat's like, I lived in the NFL because I was a fullback, but I love playing special teams. And Joe D mentioned today, and you correct me because you were there covering it, but Joe D said, he's an offensive player with a defensive mindset.
Yep.
And it's hard to take guys like that off the field, man. I mean, you talk about this team a few weeks ago, we were all kind of questioning leadership. Like, who are the leaders on this team? I think the more that 44 is out there, he becomes a guy who kind of sets the energy tone and the attitude tone for this football team. So I'm anticipating, maybe I'm wrong, but hoping also at the same time that 44 becomes a little bit more part of this offense.
He's a Sean Elliott guy, without a doubt. Sean Elliott type of player. That guy, you've seen what he can do on special teams in his 3 years at South Carolina. He's been on special teams and making plays constantly. But he's got to be one of the most physical football players on the team. And you have to imagine that can help some things with the offensive line too. And, it's one of those things where, it kind of feels like maybe he hasn't been used enough in this offense so far, just because he was the play, the first play of the year was assigned to go to Maurice Brown. And you would think, that's something that there's obviously something there they like with him. So, maybe there's going to be more use to him just because I think tight ends can be used a little bit more in this offense too. Those little dump off passes where they stretch the field, which is something that we've talked about. I know I've talked about with JC and Phil. Like, it feels like the offense has to stretch the field a little bit more. A guy like Maurice Brown can do that because he's a guy that he can catch and he can turn upfield too. He's got a pretty decent speed, but he's going to have, the kind of that Sean Elliott aggressiveness where he'll also run through somebody too. But I think, when you think back to 2 years ago, how they used Nate Atkins in that offense, or would have been 3 years ago when the offense was really struggling, they used Nate Atkins in the backfield. He was sometimes to help block. Feels like Maurice Brown can do that type of stuff too. So I'm with you 100% there. I'm really interested to see if he can be somebody that, because I think he could be a Swiss Army knife type of thing for this offense, where he could do a lot of things to help this offense. And I'm really interested to see if with kind of these moves, if he's somebody that becomes more involved.
Well, I just, there's a toughness factor there that, I'm not, I got to be careful how I say it because I don't ever want it to be misconstrued. And I certainly don't want any of those guys thinking that I'm questioning the toughness of Shane Beamer football team. I know how tough he is, and I know what they preach day in and day out. But the naked eye, when you watch him play sometimes, it hasn't looked like that. I'm not saying that they're not tough kids. They're not a tough team. This is a tough program, period. The end. Anybody that wants to doubt that can take a hike. And I can prove it because they turn around and win games every time everybody thinks everything's over for Gamecock football. They turn around and they win games. They have done this every single year. Teams that aren't tough, they're not able to do that. But from a play-to-play standpoint, a drive-to-drive standpoint, you got to have some tone setters out there, man. I mean, you just have to do that, and especially in this league. And so, 44 seems to be a guy that wants to set the tone. I mean, he's lurking at all times. Like, if you're a defensive guy and 44 is in the game, you got to keep an eye on him. And if you don't know where he is, he might be coming up quickly behind you, and it's not going to feel good when he gets there, right? The whole defensive mindset, playing offensive football type thing. So guys like that, guy like Brady Hunt, kind of a blue collar, tough football player that these are the guys that Sean Elliott historically has wanted to play football with and has won with too. Let me mention one other thing, as I know we're up against a break here, but let me mention one other quick thing on this. You mentioned stretching the field. Carolina, of course, needs to stretch the field. They haven't been able to throw it for the last 2 weeks, and they've had some deep plays this year. They've had some short yardage plays and ended up going for big chunks and things like that. LSU didn't allow a play coming into that South Carolina game. They had not allowed a play for 40 yards or more during the season. Well, Matt Fuller put an end to that early, right on the ground. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, if they want to stretch it through the air, there's got to be quick game. Like, they have got to get to the line of scrimmage. They got to snap the ball. They've got to get it out of Lenore Sellers' hands. I don't think that makes me an offensive genius. You're not going to come to me for football advice, Alex. If you do that, your team's going to lose. but I'm just telling you, like, this team they got to get the ball out of Sellers' hands. It's going to obviously get him into a rhythm and get him going. But what is it going to do? It's going to make these guys start coming up a little bit closer. We got to keep Carolina out of third and short, because if they get in third and short, Sellers' legs become a factor. So if they're coming up to prevent that, and Oklahoma wants to get a little bit exotic and they want to start getting a little bit daring, that's when you can hit those plays. That's when Nick Harbor one-on-one, or a Vandrevius Jacobs, or a Brian Rowe, or whoever it ends up being downfield, that's when they're there. So they got to get into that quick game and get the ball out of his hands if they're going to throw it.
Yeah, and that's I'm 100% agreeing with you. I think the improved run game, if it is improving, that's something they can build on. That's going to help open it up. But I think it was Craig in the comments mentioned, he and the Queen of Cox kind of both mentioned, like, that quick game's got to come back. Like, you saw a little bit of it early on with some of those kind of quick slants, but those types of things are what's going to help. And I think Craig made another good comment that I posted up there. If Fuller is kind of the tone setter too. Like, he and you feel like if he and as you mentioned, Maurice Brown are on the field at the same time, there's a lot of that type of physicality to go along there in the run game, along with Lenore Sellers. So that's I'm in 100% agreement there. And right, real quick, we need to take a break because we got Justin in from SportsCapValue.com, and when we come back, we'll kind of dive into a little bit more of Oklahoma and some other things from a betting line standpoint.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cards while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, Freddie.
You bet.
JC Sherbert here had a brilliant idea that some good friends of mine in Florence have told me about. Next time you're having a wedding or an event or anytime you got to feed a bunch of people, talk to my friends over at Flavortown Eats and Events. That's right. It's a food truck / trailer, prepares the food fresh on site right there for you. No hassle. It's absolutely delicious. They'll come out, turnkey solution to feed the masses at your event. Go to their website right now. flavortownflow.com. That's flavortownflow.com. They have all the contact information you need, and they are a proud sponsor of the Late Night Gamecock Show and the Chief Sports Network.
Welcome to Palm Casual Patio Furniture. Because we are the factory, Palm Casual has the ability to offer the highest quality outdoor furniture paired with world-class service. Since 1979, our factory showrooms have done our best to make the buying process as easy as possible for our customers. Our understanding of the many factors that go into your decision has helped us create our 30-day trial period that increases the level of comfort our customers feel during the shopping experience. Visit us in Somerville, Mount Pleasant, Myrtle Beach, and Bluffton, and online at palmcasual.com for our products in out-of-state locations. Go Gamecocks!
This is the Late Night Gamecock Show with the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones. And with the king of late night, Matt Anderson. Go Gamecocks!
Well, welcome back into the show. It's now time for the second half here, and we're going to bring in, as always, Justin Lyles with SportsCapValue.com. Justin, how you doing?
Good. How we doing, boys?
Doing good. I think I'm interested to see your take. Every week we kind of start off with what you saw in this last game. Kind of just what were some of your quick takeaways from what you saw as Gamecocks versus Tigers this past weekend?
I think it was more the usual stuff we've seen through the first 6 games. A lot of penalties, a lot of undisciplined ball, kind of, stepping on our own feet, getting in our own way type ordeal. And I think we saw that again against LSU. But at the end, towards the end of the game, we still have a chance. But obviously, Lenores did some good things. I still don't think Lenores is back to his true self. Post concussion and even going back to last year. I thought the defense held their own. I think they've been pretty consistent, so to speak, for the first 6 games. Look for them to be this, to do the same throughout the rest of the year. But obviously, with the news coming through on Sunday about the change at offensive line, obviously, I think they're trying to get a spark going for this offense. Just overall, scoring 10 points a game is just not going to get it done.
Yeah. And kind of, overall, talking about need a spark. They're going to need it this weekend against Oklahoma. It's going to be the first matchup between the two in Williams-Brice Stadium. South kind of got the first win last year out in Norman. But this Oklahoma team's taking a big step forward under Brent Venables this year. They're number 14 team in the country. Just suffered their first loss against Texas, 23-6. We're kind of going to get into some of the things that happened there. But the Sooners, they have wins over Illinois State, Michigan, Temple, Auburn, and Kent State. I think one of the interesting things right now, this line is at least when I looked early this afternoon, is it still at 5.5? Is that what it's at right now?
Yes, that's correct.
That line screams to me that no one knows which John Mateer you're going to get. Is that going to be because the John Mateer, you saw in those games I mentioned before in some of those wins, it was really good. But then he had the hand surgery or the surgery and then comes back and, it didn't look 100%. Like, I think Texas had a really good game plan. I think the question is going to be, which John Mateer are you getting? Is it being that if he's, rushed back from that Texas game, is that something that's going to hurt him in this game? Is that kind of how you're feeling with this line right now?
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think they probably brought back Mateer a little too soon. I didn't think once the injury was announced, I didn't think he'd be back till after our game this coming Saturday, but here we are. I thought it was forced, a little rushed. I'd like to see what discussions were kind of leading up to that, but he wasn't himself, and let's hope he doesn't turn into another Heisman hopeful coming into Williams-Brice on Saturday. As far as the game, this is going to be a really good spot for South Carolina, I think, as we're in game 2 of the 5, as I said last week, going through the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So if they're going to get a game out of the 5, this is probably the most probable one.
Yeah, look here, John Mateer obviously is a special kid. I'm with you. I think people have been maybe a little apprehensive about saying what you just said, especially on national television this week. I mean, he didn't look good last weekend. I mean, does it really take a doctor to tell you that? I mean, his hand was bleeding in the first quarter, man. Like, it didn't look good at all. Obviously, Texas was going to do what they could to put some pressure on him. And we'll see what he feels like this weekend. I mean, he's not even on the injury report, so obviously he's going to play against South Carolina, and as far as we know, he's really good to go. I've been thinking about the Gamecocks, and you mentioned Coach Teasley being relieved of his duties on Sunday. Look, we got to make sure that we're understanding a little bit what's going on in that locker room, right? Because on the outside, the fans look at this and go, with all due respect to Coach Teasley, who I like as a human being, he's a wonderful, wonderful man, and he's going to land on his feet. He's going to coach a long time, and we're all going to be pulling for him. Those are the guys you pull for right there. Lonnie Teasley is the guy you pull for.
Yeah.
But the fans are looking at this going, good riddance, okay, because this guy wasn't doing a good job. The offensive line has gotten worse. They continue to have all these issues. They shoot themselves in the foot, everything that everybody says. And that's all true. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way on the outside. On the inside, Shane Beamer and his staff have a little bit of a difficult job. Alex, you're around the players every day. I don't have the opportunity to be around them every day. But you know as well as I know, good luck finding a dude on that team that doesn't like Lonnie Teasley.
Yeah.
They all like him. So, you mentioned Mike Shula mentioned today that it's heartbreaking to see a guy let go like that in the middle of the year, but it's a business and things need to be done from time to time. Coaches understand that. Players, they don't quite get it. So there's a lot of guys in there who are going to be going, man, I can't believe they did that to Lonnie. And then on the other side, they're also going to be going, yes, sir, coach, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it. But in the back of their head, they're like, man, I really miss Coach Teasley. Maybe they're texting with him, seeing how he's doing, whatever the case is. So there's two different versions of the Lonnie Teasley story. There's the public version, and then there's what's going on behind the Gamecock curtain. And Carolina has to squash that and get that out of their system. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in the public eye an hour before the game happens on Saturday when Sean Elliott does what Sean Elliott does. He runs out of the tunnel and he starts slapping you around and headbutting you and getting everybody all fired up. And that's, I think, going to be a big moment for Carolina football this weekend.
Yeah, and I think, kind of talk about not rallying the troops. That's not kind of the thing here. But Shane Beamer's been really good about, when times are tough for South Carolina in these past few seasons, like he's kept that team together and, they've bounced back in big ways. So you kind of that go along with what you mentioned with Sean Elliott, what he does. Like, his players love him too, back from when he was with App State, his first stint at South Carolina. His players love him too. So, how quickly do they kind of mesh? That's going to be one of the big questions, I think, and they're going to need to mesh pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we'll see what happens, with the discipline. I kind of spoke about that earlier. Will the penalties kind of come back to, normal instead of this, 9-10 a game, whatever, they had in LSU. I think they'll hit the ground running, just so to speak, and for getting back to the basics, when it goes to just playing traditional football.
Yeah, and kind of sticking back to this Oklahoma offense real quick, it's really kind of interesting. They're, averaging 389 total yards per game, which is 11th in the league, 266.7 passing fifth. that's fifth in the league, but only 122.3 rushing, which is 13th in the league towards the bottom. So it kind of feels like you're going to have the same type of game plan in this game. Now it's going to be kind of a different test with, again, it goes to what we're talking about, John Mateer, like what kind of what John Mateer are you getting in this game? But it's going to be another one of those where you feel like if you can get Oklahoma into some of those obvious passing downs, which I feel like we've talked about with ever since really that Kentucky game, like that's been the key for the defense. If they can continue to do that, there's a chance for South Carolina in this game if they can get some things figured out offensively too.
Was that to me? Sorry.
Oh, I was just, whoever wants to take it. Yeah, sorry. Whoever wants to take it.
No, you go ahead. Y'all go ahead. I talked this to death today and yesterday and the day before. Y'all go ahead. I'm excited to get to some betting lines here in a minute.
Yeah.
So y'all
have
at it.
This is a pivotal game. I know y'all probably talked about this. This is a pivotal game in South Carolina season. You know, looking back on last year, you go 3-3 and looking at the season going in the wrong direction. They run off 6 in a row, and now you're in the same boat. You're 3-3. This is a really big game as the schedule's not getting any easier, and this is a make or break season game type game here going into this, mid-October. So I think this is a very critical game, and I think Beamer realizes that. Obviously, you've seen him make a change from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything from the Oklahoma side of things for this game. Let's move to some betting lines. Do you have kind of maybe 5 games or so that you got circled on the college football slate this weekend, Justin?
Yes, as I was looking over the slate for this upcoming Saturday, I'm looking at the Michigan hosting Washington. They're currently at -5.5. Michigan got beat on the road at USC, the other USC on the West Coast, and I look for them to bounce back and cover the 5.5 against Washington. Yeah. Boston College has kind of gotten off to a rough start, so to speak. And I think there was some kind of stuff in the media with Bill O'Brien. I expect them to play well this week. I'm looking at them to cover the -1.5 against UConn. And then I like South Carolina 5.5, getting the points here. I think this is a good spot for South Carolina to cover that, being the 12:45 kickoff. And then I'm looking at I'm kind of scrolling down later in the day. Memphis and UAB are playing. I'm looking at that total for the going over 63.5. I expect a lot of points to be scored in that game. And then let's see, that's 3. 2 more. We're going to go with Arizona State hosting Texas Tech. They're undefeated. Mm-hmm. They spent a lot of money in the NIL stuff. This could be a kind of slip-up spot for Texas Tech as I kind of see it. I like Arizona State at home, getting 7.5. And then last, I'm looking for – this might be I don't know if it's controversial. They should have beat Georgia last week, kind of gave that game away. And kind of hurt me as I was on Auburn last week getting points at home. But I like for them to kind of upset Missouri this weekend.
Let me ask you a question. I feel like this is a major under weekend in the SEC, starting with the game going on up in Nashville. How on earth do Vanderbilt and LSU get to 48.5 in this game? I'm not seeing it.
That's probably my favorite play of the weekend. Like, I don't see 48 in that game from what we've seen from both teams. Like, I mean, first of all, how about Vanderbilt being favored in that game against LSU? I feel that's probably been a long time in the making, but that 48.5 just seems way high for that game. I could see it being much lower than that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, maybe the first 1 to 20 wins, I guess. We'll go with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the LSU defense is not a good matchup for Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt, the way that they play, and then vice versa, the issues that you've had throughout the season. We just saw them. I mean, LSU's not a juggernaut offensively yet. I mean, they found something in Trey Green, and I don't know who Vanderbilt has to cover that guy, but LSU continues to make mistakes offensively too. And until they get those cleaned up, they're not going to run out there and score a bunch of points like they're used to doing down on the Bayou. So that seems like an under to me. Arkansas and A&M at 60.5 with that A&M defense. I mean, I know Arkansas's defense is awful, so I don't see where it's adding up here. The Aggies are 7.5-point favorites in the ball game, and if the A&M defense is good and the Arkansas defense is bad, then that would be a blowout. But I don't know how you're going to get to 60. I feel like that's an under. Ole Miss and Georgia, while the Dogs can score a little bit, we know that Ole Miss can score a little bit as well. those are the games that end up being defensive battles in a series like this. If you look back over the last few years in the SEC, and I mean, we could go on and on. There was one other one on here that I had circled somewhere, but
well, I'll give you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Tennessee and Alabama was the one that I thought maybe at that 59.5. That's a high number, but you can see it getting up there like a 34-31 type ball game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there are two spreads from the SEC that are kind of catching my attention now. And you mentioned one of them with Arkansas game. But first, I'm going to go Florida and Mississippi State. Florida right now is a 9.5-point favorite in that game. And, with all the talk that's out there right now about Billy Napier and his job status going into this bye week, I think Florida's going to win that game, but I could see Mississippi State covering that. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that was kind of a weird line. I can't figure Florida out. I don't think anybody can. I've bet them. I've stayed away. I've bet against them. They've hurt me. They've helped me. This is one of the games I just don't know. There's talk of them firing Napier after the game because they're going into a bye week. So, and then Mississippi State is surprisingly pretty decent coming off the season they had last year. They flipped their team like pretty much a whole brand new team, and they're sitting in 4 wins already. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if this it comes down to the end, closing it out. So, yeah, it's a stay away from me overall.
Okay. Yeah, with Florida, I think a lot that goes into that too is like you mentioned, like you don't know what Florida you're going to get. Are you going to get the Florida that's fired up that we've seen these past seasons for Billy Napier, who come out and get one of these big types of wins when their backs are against the wall, or is it kind of just it's finally going to break for them? That it's going to be a really interesting game to watch there. And then Arkansas and Texas A&M's the one that's a 7.5-point spread. Like I feel like I'm maybe not as confident saying that Arkansas is going to cover in that one as I am against with Mississippi State, but that one's kind of intriguing too to go along with that total.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say I'm with JB on the total on Alabama and Tennessee. I could see that going over. Both teams hitting the 30s. I don't think Alabama's defense is not what they were under Nick Saban, and they look pretty good on offense. And we know Tennessee is pretty explosive as well. So I could definitely see this be a shootout.
Overall this year, it seems. I mean, we're halfway through the season. We got a long ways to go here, and they're all gonna battle. And there's gonna be a bunch of stuff on tape, and things could possibly change. But it does seem like the old school standard of defense has returned to the league. I don't know what that's attributed to. I would venture a guess. Okay, let's take this a little bit of a different direction when it comes to the offenses. The defenses, 13 of 16 defenses in the league are allowing 20 points or less per game. All right, the 3 worst defenses in the SEC by points per game allowed, you could guess 2 of them, Kentucky and Arkansas. The third one will sneak up on you a little bit. That's Tennessee. They haven't been stellar over there on that side, and that's part of what we were just talking about. But offensively, y'all mentioned how unpredictable and how hard it is to figure out Florida. Well, guess what? It's the same with LSU, right? It's the same with South Carolina. I mean, there are a lot of teams in this league. I mean, or there's a few teams in this league that were expected to be pretty good on offense, those 3 notably, and they're not. Do we attribute that all to injuries? Do we attribute it to the transfer portal and the fact that you're plugging guys in and out every single year, and it's just hard to create some sort of camaraderie? Do we attribute it to the system in which they run? They've got 3 quarterbacks who are all probably going to see them in the NFL over the next year or two. I don't know, but there are a bunch of teams offensively that you just don't trust in this league. So if you're going to bet, it's hard to do it. But then you flip it to the other side of the field and you say, well, they're pretty good there defensively, and that's the way that the SEC used to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And from the sports betting side, you're seeing that as well with a lot of the sharps. I think a lot of the sharps have gotten off to like a not the best start so far, 7 weeks into the college football. And I think that's because what you talked about with the parity. I think teams are just getting more evened out. Teams aren't stacking players because those, second tier guys, those backups, they're taking money to go play somewhere. Where normally back, 5-10 years ago, you would have that second string corner on Alabama who would start on any team in the country, yet he was not playing in Alabama or wherever. I think you're seeing it evenly spaced out, and I think you're seeing that in the betting world as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Craig brings up a pretty good point in the chat too, talking about contributing to lower scoring in the SEC, to every team having dudes on the D line. And I think there's a lot of truth to that too, because it does feel like when you think about you go through the SEC teams, like it feels like everybody's got at least one guy, at least two guys, just because I think that's such a priority in the transfer portal from a NIL standpoint and things like that. So I think that is part of that. And then he also mentioned no one's really running it great, which is also true. It feels like a lot of these teams that are having some success, maybe outside like a Vanderbilt who runs that unique offense, like is a lot of success going on through the air right now.
But not in Columbia, though. Yeah, case in point, case in point is the University of South Carolina. I mean, where are they defensively without 44 and without 99? Both of those guys are transfer portal guys from within the league. Not every defensive tackle in the SEC comes, and stays within the league, obviously, but this league has plenty of money to spend. That is a priority position. Those guys ask for a lot, they get a lot. Same thing with the edge guys. So you can go get them, so that's a pretty good point. The offensive line is the other part of it. There are very few big time offensive linemen that go into the portal that everybody can afford to get. There's just not enough of them to go around. So they're only going to go to a select few spots. But that's not really part of the conversation, but it's certainly worth noting. Can I ask you about one other line that's going on out there this weekend?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna pick my guy Raphael's brain on Friday on this too. I'm a little bit stumped. I'm excited to watch the game. It means nothing to me or anybody that I know, but the Holy War returns between BYU and Utah at 8:00 on Fox on Saturday night from old Lavelle Edwards Stadium. As the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones would tell you, you don't just walk into Lavelle Edwards Stadium in the Holy War and win that game. But Utah is a 3.5-point favorite here. I don't know a ton about both teams. I've seen enough of them. They're both good football teams. Obviously, BYU is undefeated. They've had some close calls. Their best win this year is against Arizona. I know that, and that was a 6-point victory that happened just last week. But what do you know about this game and about that spread at 3.5?
Well, Utah was at home last week. I can't remember who they played, but they dominated, in orderly fashion. They've been really good at home, but here they're going on the road, an undefeated BYU. Yeah, this is one of those kind of what I like to say fishy lines. They're not ranked as high as BYU. They're going into somebody else's place to play, and yet the majority of the money is coming in right now currently on BYU as I look at my info. To me, I like Utah in this spot. I just think what the numbers we're looking at, I just think they're probably going to have the better hand here, and that's why you see the line the way it is.
Yeah, I mean they have dominated the entire year, except for when Texas Tech came to town. I took Texas Tech in that game. All of my partners, Sherbert and Morgan and all those guys, oh, no, that ain't going to happen. They're not going to Utah winning that game.
Right.
And Texas Tech throttled them, So I'm just curious. I mean, they did go to Wyoming. My adopted Wyoming Cowboys have in-laws out there. Beautiful ballpark. Had no issues there. They had no issues at West Virginia. But this is just going to be a different bird going into Lavelle Edwards on Saturday. And I was just curious. Again, that matters nothing to our neck of the woods. But I looked at it and I thought, I don't know. I thought maybe it'd be more of a pick'em type ball game.
Yeah, I think Utah is kind of trending in the right direction after that Texas Tech loss, and they seem to be traditionally, get better and better as the season progresses. And BYU's at that spot, and that 6 or 7 game range where pressure starts to start pulling up, and you see those undefeated teams come back to life where they take a hit around this week. So I would not be surprised if they take one here.
All right.
Well, before we get you out of here, Justin, you got a score prediction for this weekend for the Gamecocks?
Yeah, I like South Carolina to win here. I'm going to say that we score 21. Our number seems to be 21, so I'm like the 21-17 Gamecocks.
I feel like I'm kind of leaning that way. JB, I know y'all got the preview show, but you got a score prediction you want to give out? You want to wait?
Yeah. Yeah, very similar to 3 years ago. I'm going to go 63-38 Carolina.
That'd be something.
People probably think that I drink it. Nobody ever sees me after about 12 o'clock. They don't know what I do the rest of the day till the next morning at 10. They probably think I'm a heavy, midweek nighttime drinker. Nah, I got 63, man. I just like them. I'm going to go 63-38.
That'd be pretty incredible. Well, Justin, before we get you out of here, as we always appreciate you coming on, just tell people where they can find you and catch you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You can go to my website, sportscapvalue.com. is where we have our daily picks every single day, all the major sports. We're heavy on college football and NFL right now, obviously, with that being in midseason. So go check it out, sportscapvalue.com.
Gotcha. Well, y'all make sure you go check that out. And Justin, I'm sure we'll catch you here either next week or here pretty soon back on the show. Always appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Justin. Well, that about does it for us, JB. On your debut on the Late Night Gamecocks show, you got any kind of closing remarks here for us?
Yeah, this is water. Everybody's probably seen it's water. And I'm just kidding, obviously, about that score. Yeah, no, it's I saw somebody earlier had mentioned generally I don't, as you know, pay much attention to the chat box. There's no disrespect to anybody. I just try to stay focused on what we're doing. But somebody mentioned the fact that, boy, I thought we had plenty of offensive linemen. Injuries wouldn't matter. That we all did. I'm not so sure that many of us so anticipated 3 or 4 injuries at a time. And I just don't know. I'm not aware of many teams out there who can lose 3 of their top guys and still feel really good about where they are. I mean, that is a major concern for South Carolina. There's no question about it. And now we see why, losing Cam Pringle obviously really hurt. How ready would he be to play right now? I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know where he was in his development. I heard he was coming along nicely. I would say maybe the bigger loss.
At least.
Well, it'd be for sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think the question that you would ask yourself, just for the fact that we have a microphone and we can ask the question, it means nothing to what the solution may be. But where would they be up front if Cam Pringle and Ja'Kai Moore had not transferred out? I mean, Ja'Kai Moore had his issues at South Carolina, but he was constantly in the lineup when he was healthy. I mean, he was one of their better guys. So even if he didn't start the year in the lineup, I'd say it's a pretty safe bet Ja'Kai Moore would be in the ball game this weekend and last weekend and the weekend before, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's some other guys on this team that have been very highly recruited, as we know, that aren't just aren't ready to play yet. So is that kind of part of what went into, hey, we're going to pull the final string on Lonnie Teasley? It was strike 1, it was strike 2, strike 3, strike 4, how many times are we going to strike out before I actually have to make a call on this thing and pull him out of the lineup, right? To use a baseball term. So do you look around at some of these young guys who have been in the program, not that long, but long enough, guys like Ryan Brubaker or I know that Shivers has been in there playing a little bit more, but a guy like Blake Franks, somebody like that. I mean, these are kids that other dudes wanted. And I know some of them have had their injuries and stuff, but they also haven't played when they've been healthy. So you go back and you look at what they did in the portal. And Alex, you were covering this. You were covering the recruitment of the transfers. How many questions were you getting on the Big Spur of why do we keep signing offensive linemen out of the portal? I thought we had a bunch of offensive linemen around here. Right? I mean, right?
Now.
That question, that question was being asked over and over and over again. And all these guys have played, and they've only played half the season. So I don't know, man. Maybe they didn't feel as good about them as we all thought they did coming into the year. So I don't know. It's going to be a patchwork group this weekend. We'll see if Boaz is back in there at guard or if they throw him back in at center. Where does that move Big Tree? Does Tree go to guard and you put Shivers out at tackle, or do you move Tree back to tackle, where I think he's done a pretty good job, and take your chances with Stanley inside with Newsome? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's got to be better. That's for sure.
And real quick before we get out here, and to your point, we talked about, Sean Elliott's number one priority kind of being, getting these pre-snap mental mistakes cleaned up. I think another one of his top priorities is to get the starting 5 figured out and let it roll. Because I feel like there's been a lot of rotating, and there's so much talk about how, you want to build chemistry and continuity on the offensive line. It feels like it's time for them to figure out, all right, these are the 5, let them go, barring injury. Without that, obviously they're dealing with that right now. But it feels like that's another thing that should be top of the list as well.
Yep, there's no question, man. I mean, it's the same old, same old. We're having the same conversation every week. We're just finding different ways to have the conversation every week, which is don't shoot yourselves in the foot, and you've got a chance. That's literally what it comes down to for this football team. Don't shoot yourselves in the foot, and you have a chance to win the game. I think they've got a chance this week, like they've got a chance every single week the rest of the season. And I don't think that this team is throwing in any towels. I do think it's probably been a challenge over the last 72 hours to kind of keep your guys on the, hey, stay focused here. Stay focused. I know Lonnie's gone. We love Lonnie. This is best for our football team. You always have a relationship with him, but you wear this uniform. It is up to you to go out and perform in it. I think they will perform this weekend, and we'll see if that's good enough to get them a win.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to watch. Well, JB, I really appreciate you joining me tonight on the Late Night Gamecock Show. I know everybody in the chat probably already tunes into Inside the Gamecocks, but JB and those guys will be back tomorrow. I'll be on with Phil in the afternoon, kind of filling in for JC, who I didn't see JC on the injury report, on the availability report. Do we know? Do we have an update on JC?
He's got a throat.
He's got a throat. Okay.
Yeah,
well, he's out there. He's not even listed on the injury report. So
yeah, we did a mock press conference today. Phil and I did. Well, I think you were in the facility with the coordinators, but Phil threw the questions at me, and I gave a Beamer answer, and then I gave a Muschamp answer. The Beamer answer was JC is like all those other guys. That report will be out tonight at 8:10.
Well, I didn't see his name in the report, so we'll have to get an update tomorrow morning. But to everyone who's watching and everybody in the chat, we appreciate y'all joining tonight. And as Matt always mentions, we're so appreciative of y'all's time to tune in to the Late Night Gamecock Show and spending around an hour with us. So for JB and Alex, we'll catch y'all next time. Appreciate y'all joining in.